All right, we are live and waiting for the people to come in. Waiting for the people to come in. If they don't come in, we're going to get started anyway because they can always see it another time.
Okay, then.
Right now, see, I hate the little. You know what gives me anxiety is looking at the eyes and the number next to it. I'm just going to stop doing that because it just gives me anxiety to try to see who's coming in. I'm not
I
doing
think
it.
you're the only one who can
You can't
see it.
hear me?
Yes, I hear you, but I don't see that number.
I can't hear you. Okay, hold on. Let's see here. Edit the mic setting. Okay, want to say anything and see if I can hear you?
Here. Can you hear me? Uh-oh.
I can't hear you. We were doing so good. We were early and everything.
Yep. Do you want me to leave and come back in?
Yeah. Did you say you're going to leave and come back? Okay. We'll try that. Hello, everybody. It's Charissa. Hey. It's going to be a fun live. I'm so excited. But as usual, there's always something technical going on around here. Sometimes it just happens that way. I swear it was working a minute ago. She could hear me and I could hear her and we were rolling along, but now we can hear each other. So she has left for a moment and she's coming back. There she is.
Can you hear me now?
No? Okay. All right. So we're going to try this again. I'm positive it's going to work. I just know it. It's going to work. Worst case scenario, maybe we'll take it to the phone. Let's see if that works. Anyway, I'm hot, as usual. How's everybody Friday doing while we're waiting? Any plans? Can you believe how fast this year is going? I mean, I'm having some mixed feelings about that. It's the beginning of the school year in my brain, but really it's not because next week will be the middle of October. And I know I'm rushing things, but then right after October, then there's November. Okay, then Thanksgiving, and then there's Christmas. And then after that, things just really fly. I'm just saying, hang in there. We're waiting for Miss Charvalla to come back in here. She was here early. Oh, there she is.
It says the mic is working.
Okay, I have an idea. Want to try with your phone? Let's see if this works. Wait a minute. Okay, that says. Oh, you know what? Because it's muted.
It wasn't muted before.
It wasn't muted before. Okay. Now it's not muted. Okay. It's not muted now, but I still don't hear you. Anyway, we're going to do this. Okay, let's try it. I'm not going to let go of the other one until I.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
You can't hear me on either device?
I'm going to go to my comments and see if there are any comments here. Okay, so we have someone that says they can hear the both of us. Okay, say something to me.
Something to you.
Okay, we're good. I don't think it was you. I think it was me. You can hang up on your phone. I think we are good. We're going to There you go. All right. So, you guys, thank you for hanging with me. This is Carissa Marie. And it's all about empowering, encouraging, and enlightening the people. And I have Miss Charvalla West here, and she is a lovely lady. And I'm not just saying that because she's my boss. Although she, although she really is, though, ask anybody. But she is an outstanding person who is doing an outstanding thing, and she is our leader. So she's the chief operating officer and director of community aspects with United Way. And we have so much to talk about, not just about United Way, but all we want the heart of the person. Why? Because it takes a special person, really, to do something like work for United Way. So, Miss Charvalla, how are you?
I'm good, Miss Charissa. How are you?
I'm doing good. So tell the people about United Way. Because I remember when you and I first met, we talked about how some of the younger generation, when they hear United Way, they think, you mean the airline? Seriously, like there needs to be we need to revisit that. So tell me about United Way.
So, United Way in general is a nonprofit community organization that works to do good things in their respective community. There's a United Way for every community across the world, actually. So, our United Way of the Virginia Peninsula works to bring our community together to create pathways out of poverty. That's the simple one liner. But that looks like bringing people and organizations together from the government sector, nonprofit sector, and the corporate sector, and mobilizing resources, financial resources. So we do a lot of fundraising that goes back into the community. Volunteering, we create volunteer opportunities and help connect people to that. We do a lot of advocacy on behalf of the people we serve and the organizations we support, all with a goal of moving people out of poverty.
So that's excellent. I think the biggest thing that people don't realize is that these are regular working people working hard every day. They're going to work. They're doing everything in their power to put food on the table, to pay for their lights. But just sometimes, things happen and they miss the mark and they're not able to do the everyday things. And that's where United Way comes in. People don't even realize it's there for them. And so that's what's so exciting about that.
Yeah, I think in general in our country, when we think of poverty and what it means to be poor, many of us don't include ourselves in that category. But the truth, to your point, Carissa, the truth of the matter is so many of us are working and we have enough money to make most of our bills most of the time. But, think about students who are borrowing from their parents because they're just starting out on their own, or many of us, especially in human services, we're working to serve those who are most vulnerable financially, but many of us are struggling to make ends meet, especially now with inflation being the way it is, interest rates going up. Since this is about Charvalla personally, I will say, 2 or 3 years ago, there was this big campaign across the country to address minimum wage, and the state of Virginia raised the minimum wage and set into legislation for it to continue to increase over the next, I think we've got 3 or 4 more years of that. And just after that happened, rent prices started going up, and then the pandemic happened, and in addition to housing costs going up, even basic things like milk and eggs cost way more now than they have ever. So it feels like an okie doke. It's like, for so many of us, finally people were starting to get closer to what we called a livable wage. But now it costs so much more to live. And so for us at United Way, we really focus on that experience of not having enough.
Mhm.
And our target population, we use this acronym ALICE, which stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. It's big words that mean people who are working and still don't have enough. And these, all of us in that category, don't qualify for programs through the government. So when you think about SNAP benefits or food stamps, as they used to be called, somebody who's earning $45,000 a year, even if you have a kid or two, you don't qualify for that. But try to live in this area on $45,000 and raise children. It's nearly impossible. So, we know that in order to make a difference in the lives of the parents and children that are experiencing that, and individuals that are experiencing that type of scarcity, who can't rely on the government, they don't have assets of their own to fall back on, we know that it's going to take the community coming together to really address those needs, because it's cyclical, not just for the adults in the household who, I can't make enough money to sustain my employment. I'm not making enough in my employment to sustain my transportation, childcare, all the things I need to continue being employed, right? And so that cycle continues, but it's also a generational cycle, that needs to be addressed. So it's a complex issue. It's complicated. There are so many stakeholders with varying interests and priorities when we talk about who to help and how best to help. And so United Way has a tough job.
Yeah.
But we do it. We fight
Mhm.
and we advocate and we listen and we change our minds and we talk and we change other people's minds. And it's really about bringing us closer together to a solution, some solutions, right?
Mhm.
So,
That kind of brings me into, how we're talking about, we don't just try to help bring people out of poverty. We try to help, in some cases, change their mindset or change a pattern or try to interrupt what has gotten them into that. And that's what we have a program called CAN. So tell me about CAN and how the average person can benefit from that and get some resources.
yeah. So, the CAN is an acronym because nonprofit community, we love our acronyms, but it stands for Community Assistance Network. And it really is a network of community partners providing assistance to people. But to access this network through United Way, we provide one phone number that a person can call. And then our advocates that we hire and train, they work with all of the partners in this network to understand what it is they do and provide to the community, who they're serving. So, like, what makes a person eligible for those services and assistance, and then how does a person access those assistance? And so, knowing that and being equipped with that, the advocates can do the legwork on behalf of a household already in crisis, on behalf of a household that is trying to figure out how to get to work and get their kids to school and all of the things that come with just adulting in general, right?
Mhm.
And that advocate, can then pull all of that together to meet the need of the household. So whether it's, I'm way behind on this bill because of this reason, and it's going to take multiple organizations coming together to address that financial need, or it looks like, I'm behind on this bill because of this need. And we recognize that if we can provide these other services like job training and employment and childcare or whatever that looks like, then maybe we can promote some sustainability
Mhm.
and self-sufficiency for households. And so the Community Assistance Network is about bringing all those resources to bear for a household without that household trying to figure out how to navigate this complex and complicated system on their own. And we advocate on behalf of those families. I think when you talk about breaking the cycles and changing the mindset, for folks experiencing poverty, I was just having this conversation, before this, um, our conversation, Carissa. Um, I think we have to be careful. On the heels of the pandemic, there's this pervasive apathy from key decision makers and people who hold resources. Um, During the pandemic, we saw more resources coming from our government than we've ever seen before. The additional unemployment, the additional food stamps. In our state, we had the rent relief program. Other states had something similar. And so there was a lot of cash going out to help people. And so there's this idea that if we've spent all this cash to help over the last year and a half, nobody should need to ask for help now. And while I can appreciate there's a need for folks to be accountable and be responsible and that and contribute, right? I get that. But we have to be careful that we don't forget that many of these folks were asking for help before the pandemic because they didn't have enough then. And life's only gotten harder. Things have only gotten more expensive. So we can't forget that. The other piece to that too is even where there's apathy, even where we can maybe judge or point fingers, we have to remember in many cases, there are children that are impacted by whether a household's stable or not. And so we just have, it's a bigger picture. It's complicated.
Yeah.
Poverty is not as simple as the numbers on a sheet. It's not as simple as how much you earn. And the effects and the impacts of poverty ripple and they web out and they impact so many different aspects of our community. And that's why United Way exists, is to look at that whole picture and really address all of that, or bring the community together to address all of that.
When you talked about how it just kind of trickles down. It only takes one thing, really. For instance, I'm thinking about myself. I was once a single parent before I got married. And when I was I was in my 20s and I was very prideful. I was like, I got this. I can do this. I was struggling. But you know what I mean? I did it, but it was a struggle. I had to think about sometimes, okay, I've got to pay for rent. This is just on me. This was no hubby at the time. So I had to do rent. And then I had to do daycare so that I could go to the job. And then it's something we don't think about, and you touched on it, how that affects our kids. You know what I mean? How they feel on the inside, the stresses they feel, how they are they going to act out in school. They all those things kind of come into play. Are they feeling not feeling that they are okay? You know what I mean? Because they're not blind to a parent situation. They can feel things even if they can't articulate it. So something that I thought was a beautiful thing about CAN is that it addresses all the things. I'm saying, from financial coaching. I went to go visit Thrive last week, and I was under the impression that it was food, just food. But Thrive offers financial coaching. I mean, a lot of stuff. And people don't know that. I think that if people were kind of, I almost wish, that little CAN card that we have, I wish it was like a mandatory thing. When you start a job, get your CAN card, because especially for young people who are out here really trying to do it, I think it's a beautiful thing that CAN addresses those things that we don't think about, we take for granted. Oh, they're just kids, they'll be okay. No, those are lasting effects, and they're watching their parent. And if someone doesn't interrupt that, they're going to do the same thing over and over again. It's a terrible cycle that we have to work together to help break. So, a question for you: how did you decide that United Way was the way? Like, what inspired you to be a part of United Way?
So, I'm going to try and condense the long version. I I've worked since I was 13 years old. I had a full-time job by the time I was 15, and I've always worked. I had my daughter when I was 19. And so, like you, I was a very young mother trying to figure out how to work and pay daycare. I got very lucky because after I got pregnant during my first year of college. So that wasn't the route that I could take with a newborn child. I got very lucky and stumbled upon an industry that embraces diversity at its truest sense. And so I found myself growing very quickly within a very well established, wonderful organization. And I made a lot of money at a very young age. And I did that. I was a marketing manager and director for about 10 years. And while I was doing that, I had the privilege of meeting all kinds of people and working with them. As a manager, what I did well was train people, coach people, and manage performance. And so I got introduced to women, particularly Black women in the recovery community who were recovering from substance use, who found a place where they could succeed and use their skills and their talents and make a life for themselves. And I just loved it. And I decided at some point, I was like, I have been so fortunate. When I needed people, I had experienced homelessness and all kinds of things up to that point. And I was able to make a life for my family because of my work. But I just knew it had to be for something more than just making money. There had to be more, a purpose. And so I actually got certified as a life coach while I was still working there. And I decided I was going to be a life coach. So literally on a wing and a prayer, I left my job of 10 years with no other option. I was going to go be a life coach. So when I go, and to start kind of building a name for myself, a clientele, I started volunteering. And I volunteered at Avalon, which is a center for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And I ended up working there instead of doing my own life coaching thing. But I started doing groups with some of the women there and that kind of thing. Well, I got exposed to all facets of nonprofit while I worked there. And I remember working with these families that had left various situations. Many of them had things. They had a home, they had whatever, to nothing, only the things that they could fit in their car. And then they worked really hard to try and stabilize again. And we would see them ready to leave the emergency shelter, maybe to their own apartment or to their own whatever. And we would send them away with, here's some pillows, but we don't really have any sheets, or here's some pots and pans, but we don't have any plates and forks, kind of thing, and it was just like, there was only so much we could do. And so I was introduced to United Way because of a program that was started by the community. And it was, let's fix the whole issue. And it was different community partners that came together to design this. And I just knew that was the way. And over the years, as I've done some professional development and that kind of thing, I found that what drives me intrinsically is connection. I believe that each of us is connected. And I believe that we find strength in connections. And so I tell people all the time, I was born to work at United Way. Like, my whole life experience has led me to this mission of connecting people, connecting what we have to fill in the places where we lack. So that's my story.
Charvalla, that was a lot, and it totally makes sense, and I can relate on so many things. There's some parallels here going on. One thing I have to say, a beautiful thing about, and I can say this for a fact, that everybody has that heart at United Way, from the advocates to the people who do the volunteer, everyone, and so it's really it's a power. it's a power, just a moving power of people trying to help people. And I think that's what attracts us all to it. And then we feed off of each other's energy, which gets us excited and gets us ready to go out in the world and just help our sisters and our brothers. I think you're not gonna make me cry in my live, child. I'm not about to do it. I'm just gonna just playing myself. But I mean, but it really is like, I mean, to everyone, from when you first walk into the door, that beautiful smile that we see every day, Miss Brown, even from the very moment you step in, you can feel the love. And that is so what it's all about. And that's how I'm saying that. But now let's move on to this, and that was fascinating. I'm so excited, and I'm just like I'm humbled that you were here to even share that with me. That's really something. But now, what do you do? Because I see how hard you work all the time. You get there early, you stay there late. You are. You're right. It is your life, and we got to work on that because.
Yes.
So, what do you do for self-care? Do you have any self-care goals in case you don't have any in place yet?
Yes, I do have goals. I love to travel, and I don't do it enough. I like road trips, and when I say travel, like I've never even traveled internationally. That is a goal. That is a goal that I would like to achieve in the next 365 days. I want to go somewhere outside this country, but even like just a couple hours away to go to Charlottesville or to a beach or something like that. That's how I need to be in the sunshine by the water. I'm like a flower. Like that's how I rejuvenate. I also am naturally an introvert. So any times when I can just be quiet, and not have to put on or have a conversation, if I don't even mind just listening to somebody who wants to just talk. But just having moments of just quiet. I really, really, really like TV and movies, like a lot.
Do you?
Yes, a lot. And I like books. And I haven't had, to your point, I haven't had enough time as of late to really do a lot of reading or watching my good shows that I like. But I did go see Woman King last week, I think it was last week, and it was excellent, and it was
Yeah.
a wonderful time.
Okay, so just because now I'm just curious. So, what is one of your favorite shows? I just got to know.
So I'm a huge Grey's Anatomy fan. I've watched every single episode. That's like my show. I also like The Blacklist and Station 19 and 911. And my trash TV show that, don't judge me, is Real Housewives of Atlanta. I have been watching it for years and I will not stop until they stop performing. I love that show.
You know what's so crazy? You're not the only one that feels this way. I feel like it's like a guilty pleasure. I hate to admit, but that's one show. I'm so sorry. And then my husband makes me feel really bad. He'll just walk by the TV and go, and just walk out the room. I'm like, whatever. You don't even know. It's really like, it's entertaining. It's just entertaining. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's my guilty pleasure.
All right. So that is, I can't imagine. Now this is strange. What are you said you like to read books?
Yes.
When was the last time you read one?
So I did start a book last week, but I've only read like 2 chapters of it. And before that, I love Margaret Atwood books. She writes about women. Her books, like she wrote The Handmaid's Tale, which is now a series. I love her books. I'm very interested in Afghanistan. So like The Kite Runner, and books by Nadia Hashimi, I think is her name. She writes about women in Afghanistan, and they're stories, they're fiction stories, but they really paint a picture of the culture and the environment. I love those books. I like books of human human tragedy, human survival,
Yeah.
people's stories.
Wow, that makes sense. Now I'm gonna have to look into those authors. If you don't mind, don't forget to. I would like to know, especially the latest one you mentioned. I think I've heard her before.
Yeah, she
I've
writes some
heard of her.
really great books about women in Afghanistan.
Okay. Well, I don't want to hold you for too long. I have had the best time. This was so enjoyable for me. It one because people need to know these things. And they need to know that we're all in the same boat. You know, we're all in it together because we've all been there. I
Yep.
can't imagine anyone who really hasn't. Well, yes, I do know people who haven't, but there are few and far between.
Yeah.
So the majority of us, this was a beautiful thing, and I hope people are. I posted the phone number if you are local for Community Assistance Network. It's really easy to remember. It's 757-229-2222. If you are in the Virginia area and you find yourself, Virginia Peninsula area, if you find yourself that you need anything, just call. Just call us and you'll get someone to hold your hand and walk you through it. But also, more importantly, it was just a pleasure and a beautiful thing to kind of sit here and just kick it with Miss West. That was the best.
Well, thank you so much, Charissa. I really appreciate you inviting me to share. I could talk about United Way anytime. And I have truly enjoyed serving our community alongside you. Your joy and your kindness and your authenticity really help make us all better. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. On that note, because I'm an emotional beast, we're going to have to say goodnight. But I hope we can do this again, and not even just with Miss West. There are others that really need to talk about this. We have so many awesome people at United Way that I really would like for them to share their experiences too. So hopefully we'll do that.
Yeah, I'll let you know who you should invite next for sure.
Well, please do. Please do. I have some ideas, but I know you have some.
I sure do.
Okay. Well, thank you. And you have a good night. And
You
bye,
too.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.